cloud-connected apps that help drivers find everything from their favorite music to the best gas prices to systems that take over steering and braking to prevent accidents, and eventually vehicle-to-vehicle communication and self-driving cars. Technology is making driving easier, safer and more enjoyable, and is transforming the car as we know it. Staying on top of these tech trends is 30-year automotive journalist, radio and TV host Alan Taylor. Alan broadcasts the latest industry news and trends on The Drive with Alan Taylor, talking with automotive designers, engineers and CEOs, and has developed strong personal relationships with top automakers. Now, get ready for C3 2014, featuring lively discussions with innovators from automotive and consumer electronics, produced by noted journalist and connected car expert Doug Newcomb. Now here's your MC, Alan Taylor.
Well, thank you. Welcome everybody to the Connected Car Conference. You know, I was listening to Ted Cardenas from Pioneer talk about the Baja 500. I thought, how did he work the Baja 500 into consumer electronics? Well, oddly enough, in 2006, I won the Baja 500 with Hummer, and one of the things we did along the way was we used these navigation systems that gave us an edge. So instead of having to just navigate through landmarks, we had the ability to use consumer electronics, same thing you can use in your car, while we were racing out in the Baja Desert. Now, the interesting thing is today, I have a friend who's racing in the Baja 500, and he's using infrared. He's looking through the dust. This is the kind of technology that was only at one time in fighter aircraft and in aircraft. And a lot of this aircraft technology has made its way into these connected cars, and I just think it's awesome. Watching all this go on, though, I'm going to start a new business for guardrails, but not for the street, for the sides of the buildings, because cars are going to be flying pretty soon, and they're going to have to keep them out of the buildings. But no, I've enjoyed watching this kind of peanut butter and jelly relationship happen. They go together so well, cars and connectivity. And so to be part of this and to work with Doug and his whole team that put on this and the Consumer Electronics Association, I'm proud to see that, you know, the turnout is completely full and that this event is going on here in New York City where, you know, one of the editors says, I don't even own a car, which is kind of funny, but cars are everywhere. So whether it's the cabs you're driving in or the cabs that will be driving you someday with no driver behind the wheel at all, the car and the consumer electronics world are kind of a perfect fit. So let me introduce our conference chair, Doug Newcomb. Bring him back up here. We've got an exciting event for you today, and I'll talk to you throughout the day a little bit each time. And I'm glad to be here, so thanks for having me. Doug Newcomb, come on up.
Thank you, Alan. And I'd like to welcome everybody to the second annual C3 conference. Again, my name's Doug Newcomb, and I'm the co-producer and founder of the event. Also, I'd like to thank CE Week for inviting us to have this conference here, as well as thank our sponsors, and thank you for attending. You know, there's been more awareness among consumers and the media of the potential of connected car technology. In the last year, we've also seen more investments by automakers and sizable investments by technology companies as well. There's also more focus on connected car from policymakers as well as elected officials. And I think most people understand that connected car technology has the potential to solve many problems associated with driving. And these range from just sheer boredom of driving, stress from traffic, I'm sure we've all experienced that, and also wasted time in the car. And as someone who travels a lot and spends time in Southern California, pretty much anywhere these days, I can attest to that. But, you know, it also has the potential to solve larger societal issues. Wasted gas, which also means more emissions. And also, I think one of the most important things that we're going to see, or already seeing from a connected car, is that's saving lives. It really has the potential for that as well, a lot of the advanced driver systems that we're seeing today. But there's still a lot of hurdles to overcome, ranging from driver distraction. We talked about that a little bit beforehand. That's going to be our first panel. with the latest infotainment systems, to managing privacy and security, we're going to be talking about that as well, and to someday getting to self-driving cars. And what's amazing to me is that it's not a question of if, but when we're going to see that. We're going to talk about that as well today. For C3 2014, like last year, I brought together some of the top thought leaders from the auto industry, technology suppliers, government policy, researchers, analysts, and also media and communications to discuss and dissect these themes today. My goal with C3 is to cut through the clutter and the noise about connected car and deliver to stakeholders ranging from the auto industry to consumers clear, concise, and unbiased information on how technology is transforming not only cars, but transportation as a whole. As part of this effort, I recently formed the Connected Car Council that consists of some of the top thought leaders you'll hear today. And I'm also launching a C3 report to help interested parties keep up with the latest in this really quickly changing connected car space, and we'll be providing exclusive and insightful content on the C3 report. Now, the connected car is a very complex ecosystem that encompasses everything from vehicle-to-vehicle communication to cloud-based infotainment and services, from advanced driver assist systems that are leading to self-driving cars to one of these days, fully self-driving cars. And I would encourage you, one of our company sponsors, Citizen, has a display outside that really helps to encapsulate what this complex ecosystem is, because it touches so many different areas. Now, I feel like to reach the full potential of the connected car will require reaching across traditional silos, particularly for the auto industry. And it will require working closely with their technology partners, as well as policymakers, and most importantly, listening very closely to their customers. That's one of the reasons I enjoy producing the C3 events, is the chance to bridge those gaps and drive the conversation on car technology. And as I said before, I've been covering this space for a long time as a journalist, and I can't think of a more exciting time than now with the connected car, and really the promise of what it can deliver. And I really firmly believe that, like technology's transformed other industries, whether it's music, communication, media, I really feel like the car industry is ripe for that type of change, and also we're going to see disruptions. We're already starting to see some, but I think out of that will come better vehicles and safer, more enjoyable personal transportation. I think you'll get a glimpse of that today, this exciting feature, and what it will take to get there. I'm excited to bring you this exciting program and the stellar lineup of speakers, and I hope you leave today better informed about some of the latest connected car technologies, but also as excited as I am about what this means in terms of better personal transportation and helping create a better society. A quick reminder about our hashtag, C3CEW, and then also CE Week TV. We're going to have highlights from these sessions online at CE Week TV. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's program. I'd like to welcome up Gary Shapiro, President and CEO of the Consumer Electronics Association, to deliver the opening remarks. I think I got his title wrong. He gave me this look.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Doug. Thanks for producing it. For those of you who don't know, we are Consumer Electronics Association. It's a national trade association of over 2,000 technology companies. And in this area, it's virtually every major car company, retailer, aftermarket provider in the consumer electronics space. And we've been focusing on what happens in a car for quite a long time, going back to the old CASA, Vehicle Security Electronics days, Mobile Electronics Association days. In fact, that they were merged into the Consumer Electronics Association. A piece of historic trivia. By now, what is one of the most infamous or famous members of Congress, our former chairman of our board, Darrell Issa. So when you see Darrell Issa on Meet the Press or on CNN or Fox, he started in this world, folks. And he's gone down ever since. So here we are. We're actually, what's great about this is we've had conferences in the past, and now we're actually living the future. Before we talked about it, the car actually is transforming before our eyes. People are buying and using features today, as you all know, which we only talked about before. In Washington, there is a lot of focus and discussion about some of the bad things about the connected car and some of the good things. The bad things we're seeing is obviously people are dying because they're using their products that we sell as a consumer electronics industry, and they're distracting from driving. That's a very big, important issue, and at CEA we take it very seriously because we're people, and we feel bad when people are using our products improperly. So we've done what we can to try to educate people about don't text while driving. We have an innovative safety campaign. We certainly had been supportive of laws that barred texting while driving, and we're doing what we can to make sure people focus on this issue as a safety issue. At the same time, we've had an intersection with government. You'll hear shortly from the General Counsel of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and others who have various other solutions which we're not as excited about, which would affect the driving experience and the use of products in the car. But one thing is certain is that we are this is a temporary problem. We're moving towards a future of the driverless car, the self-driving vehicle. And as Doug said, in a total theft of all my opening remarks, a self-driving car will solve these problems. We will go down to maybe 5% of the car accidents we have today. We will have more efficient vehicles. We may not even have an ownership society with cars. There's a lot of theories going on about there, but what's certain is it'll be very positively disruptive in ways where people's lives by the thousands will be saved across the country and across the world. And there'll be a lot fewer jobs for tow truck operators and collision repair shops and aftermarket parts providers and emergency room physicians and nurses, as well as even drivers. And some of that will be disruptive. In fact, I asked a few months ago, I asked my then 5-year-old son, he wanted to know when he could drive. And I said, by the time you drive, there'll be cars driving themselves. And we talked about it. And he said, but Daddy, how will that affect things? And we talked about the tow truck operators being out of jobs. He said, well, what about the tow truck operators? What's going to happen to them? And I said, what do you think should happen? He said, I think they should be trained for a year, and then they should get a different job. So there are things that are going to happen to affect a lot of people, but the thing about the Consumer Electronics Association, first of all, we do own and produce the International CES, for the one person in the room that did not know that. And at that show, we have virtually every major car company there. Why? Because people are buying cars now on the basis of technology, not horsepower. And that's just a fact. But the one thing we stand for is innovation. And the reason we believe and stand for innovation, because even though it disrupts existing industries in often ways that are painful to existing businesses and people in their jobs, it always produces something better. And that's what the car industry did, none of us were around then, to the horse and buggy industry. And frankly, that next shift, I think, in automobiles is the one we'll see to the self-driving car. And all this talk about distracted driving and all the pressure and all that is something we will not have. Having said that, you're not here to hear me. I'm the moderator. When I got up here, I was asked to make a statement, and I did. I'd like to have the panelists come up to the stage, please, and seat yourselves down in no particular order. And hopefully there's microphones for each of you. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to introduce yourself and answer a very simple question for me. And as part of that introduction, the question will be, well, first of all, what's your name? What's your title and what do you do? Those are 3 questions. But the 4th question is, the connected car, good or bad? By the way, we call this a softball in the moderator world. So, please start.
Hello. It's on? Okay. My name is Kevin Vincent. I'm the Chief Counsel of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And you want me to answer the question now, Gary?
Sure.
Okay, so connected cars we think are good things, and we'd like to see it done in a safe way.
My name is David Zuby, and I'm the Chief Research Officer and Executive Vice President for the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. And I think the answer to the question is that technology can be both a problem in the car as well as a solution to the problems behind the wheel.
So Brian Radloff with Nuance Communications, and connected car is good.
I'm Gloria Berquist, and I am Vice President of Public Affairs with the Auto Alliance, and that is 12 automakers from Europe, the U.S., and Asia who sell in the United States. And we see the connected car in the broadest sense as part of the golden age of safety, and that it has a lot of safety benefits, but beyond that, it has a lot of benefits for making your time in the car more productive.
I'm George Lynch. I'm the Vice President of Automotive Business Development at Pandora. The connected car is here and here to stay.
Was that a positive thing, or is that just a comment?
That is a positive thing.
So that's positive. So we got all positives with one or two balanced. Okay, well, CEA did some research. It was called the State of In-Vehicle Technologies Report, and we found that more than half, 59% of consumers who bought a new car in the past year said that technology was an important factor in making that decision. What do you see as the important trends there, especially as it applies to what your responsibility is, and where do you see growth and opportunity? And you can answer that any way you want. Can we start with Pandora? What's the opportunity for Pandora in the car with technology?
Well, since 50% of all music listening is done in the car, we've really need to figure out how we get Pandora in the car. But more importantly, for people to use it, it has to have a great and easy user experience. The vehicle has been a place for mobile entertainment for 80 years, 75 years, since the first radio was installed in a vehicle. You know, I'll show my age. In 1972, when I got my license, I had a Plymouth Satellite with an AM radio in it, and I graduated to my 8-track deck and underneath the dash, and then matriculated into the cassette decks and the CD players and satellite radio, and now we have internet radio in the car. It's the connected world that we live in, and it's good. It's good.
Gloria?
At the Auto Alliance, since we're based in Washington, D.C., we put a lot of stock in polling, and we have our own tracking poll. So we interview 5,000 people a month, every month. And we see some of the trends in that are that it is a connected world. And the genie's out of the bottle, and we're going forward with it. And some of our polling shows that 90% of consumers, when they're in the car, they have their cell phone either in their hand, in their lap, or in the cup holder. In fact, we've also found that 70% of smartphone owners actually sleep with their phone, too. So that's not going to be changing anytime soon.
Do you have a position on that sleeping with the phone?
And so we really see the built-in in-vehicle systems as an opportunity for connected consumers to drive more safely. And when we've done polling on that, we found that 2/3 of smartphone users like the systems because they want the bigger screen. And ultimately, it's easier and safer. And I think that's one place where we're totally in agreement with NHTSA, is that we should be encouraging people to connect their phones with the in-vehicle systems designed for the driving environment.
So you were pure connectivity with the car itself and the phone. Okay, how about the insurance view of this?
So I think that...
I'm sorry. Go ahead with insurance, please.
All right, so I mean, from our perspective, the technology that's going to make driving safer is currently available in cars and doesn't necessarily rely on connectivity, but connectivity can improve the abilities of those systems. And I'm talking about driver assistance and crash avoidance systems that are looking out into the environment, gathering information that can be used to develop warnings for drivers of potential crash scenarios and try to get the drivers to take action when they need to. And in some cases, you know, as a step toward the driving car, we've got systems that will automatically apply the brakes to try to avoid crashes or reduce the severity of crashes. Those are the kinds of systems, I think, that can help deal with the other kind of with the distraction problem of drivers engaging in tasks that are not related to driving. They need help to manage, you know, what's going on behind the wheel.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Brian.
Sure. So, you know, one of the things that everybody here is talking about, right, is the distraction, the interfaces, and I think that's where we have a lot of room for improvement. Everybody wants the connectivity, as Gloria said. You know, George mentioned that everybody wants to listen to music, and internet radio is their new paradigm. But it's accessing this information that is key, and to do it in such a way that's non-distracting to the driver or minimizes the distraction, takes the mobile phone out of their hand and gives them a better optimized in-vehicle experience, I think, is what's key. From Nuance, of course, we build voice interfaces, but we're very much interested in what's the other interfaces that enable basically the driver to keep their eyes on the road, hands on the wheel, do this in a safe manner. And in order to make that happen, this whole industry needs to come together and manage and basically build information management systems, right? Present information to the driver when it's safe to do so, right? So, don't tell me that I've got, a prescription to pick up at the CVS that's coming up on my left when I'm driving down the highway at 55 miles an hour. I'll get that when I exit the ramp or whatever, and I'm in a safer environment. So there's a lot of information that we all have collectively as an industry, but we're not leveraging that to build user interfaces for the automotive space that are really optimized for that space.
So how do you envision that happening? I mean, other than coming together, do you think that should be a voluntary effort by everyone involved to say don't bother someone with a drug prescription when they're going too fast? Or
no, well, so I think, what we need to do as an industry is a lot more design, a lot more simulation environments, putting drivers into different task-oriented environments, see how they react to it, how can we optimize those interfaces. Is voice the right path, or is a touch screen for some tasks better than voice? I mean, there's just a lot of research, I think, that still needs to be done to bring this all together.
Kevin, what's your take on all this?
So when I'm driving home, I plug my iPhone up and I call my wife and ask her if I need to pick up the prescription at CVS on the way home, and whether I should get orange juice or milk, and I do it on the hands-free car phone, through my iPhone. So I want to be connected when I'm driving. I'm not going to hold it in my hand because we know it's distracting to be driving that way. There's ways to handle connection that y'all want to do, and we want to see it done. Everything that everybody's saying here on the panel is what we want to hear. We like to see the industry voluntarily looking at the distractive impacts of the technologies and reducing those in a way so that people can be connected safely. Because again, I want to be connected, and when I'm driving home, I want to be able to do all these things, but do it in a safe way.
I was reading the Auto Alliance letter from your organization to your organization, and there's a tremendous amount of research that was presented by the Auto Alliance saying that people want to bring their devices into the car. And there's a multitude of devices, and they keep almost logarithmically growing, and there's different apps and things like that. What about that?
We think it's fine to bring devices into the car if those devices can interface in a way that's not going to, create more distraction. So if you can plug the device into the car and do it in a hands-free way, that's ideal. But we do know that if you've got to be manipulating the device with your hands and taking your eyes off the road, there are some safety risks involved in doing that. So it's a question of each particular device. How does it connect? How does the user use that device? And when it's done safely, it's not a problem. When it's not done safely, it is a problem. And the industry needs to recognize it's a problem, and you're putting your customers at risk if you are encouraging that or even enabling that.
So there's scores, if not hundreds, of companies that make handheld portable devices, and there's literally hundreds of thousands of apps. I don't understand what you would suggest happen then, that every one of those meets some ability to do what you want it to do?
Well, you end up with common interfaces, and if you're having that device work through a common interface, if it plugs into a car, for instance, just really the car's interface is what the user is seeing, and that can be controlled in a way which is quite good, as Gloria is pointing out. But even if it's not plugged in, it's just the manufacturer of the app or the manufacturer of the device needs to think about how much distraction are we creating when someone is using this device while they're driving.
So whether it's a weather radio that I could carry with me or a Fitbit or something like that that I could wear in my hand, you're saying it should have a common interface with a car? I'm not following you.
No, I'm not saying it should have a common interface, but if it does have a common interface, then you can easily control for the distraction. You need to think about the impact of the user using devices behind the wheel. So what we like to see is the discussion that's happening on this panel is not having the device developers and the app developers thinking in a vacuum that everybody's going to be sitting in a nice pristine environment where there's no risk associated with using the device, because there may be.
So I have a question that I've been meaning to ask someone from your agency for a long time, because you're the former Secretary of Transportation, at least, and a number of people have made some pretty strong statements about regulating everything in the car, or at least issuing something that would have the effect of regulation. And I keep thinking back to all the lives lost from drunk driving and all the different technologies that could stop a car from being started if someone's drunk that have been out there, and nothing's ever been done in that. Could you compare the two situations?
Sure. Well, actually, technology is a great solution for drunk driving, which is the greatest scourge behind the wheel right now. Actually, I guess the greatest scourge behind the wheel is people not buckling their seatbelts. And technology can solve that too, mostly what Gloria is working on the in-vehicle technology. But there is right now a program called DADS, which, I forget what it stands for, Gloria, I'm sure you'll remember, which is essentially the interlock, which will keep people from starting their car if they're drunk. And that's technology based, and it will be brought into the vehicle. And that sort of technology brought into a vehicle is going to save lives. It's a very positive development, and NHTSA is working very closely with the industry in developing that right now. So we recognize there are plenty of technologies which have great safety benefits, and the last thing we want to do is stand in the way of the development and the adoption of those type technologies. But again, we think safety is something that everybody should be thinking about as they develop the technologies.
Well, that technology has been around for a while. The Obama administration's been around for 5 years at least, and I haven't heard anything about mandating those technologies, but I have heard it about mandating other technologies. All mandating and affecting virtually every product that a person could possibly bring into a car.
So there's a lot of discussion about mandating technologies, but there's really not any outside of the agency, but there's not any discussion inside the agency about, at least not so much mandating, but prohibiting technologies is what we normally...
Setting guidelines.
Setting guidelines are different than mandating. But, guidelines are voluntary. The industry is long, the auto industry has long had guidelines, and we think our phase 1 guidelines really is an update to the older guidelines that the industry had. We're not completely on the same page with industry, but I think in general there's a lot of recognition that NHTSA had more data, and we, based upon updated data, issued the phase 1 guidelines. And there's general agreement with the auto industry about the utility and the value of the phase 1 guidelines that we did. The question is about moving to phase 2, which will be guidelines for the handhelds and for any devices brought into the vehicle. And we recognize right now that you can encourage the in-vehicle technologies and discourage the distracting in-vehicle technologies all you want, but if people can bring something distracting into the vehicle in lieu of what's the in-vehicle technology, you could have a worse problem. So that's why we think there's a need to, working with your industry, develop phase 2 guidelines that will talk about what is the safe way that we recommend to reduce the distraction load.
Anybody want to jump in and respond?
So back on the alcohol detection and alcohol interlocks, the technology exists today that you could add to a vehicle, require a breath sample from every driver, and only start the vehicle if the driver is below a prescribed limit. That technology is currently used as reprimand for those people who are caught drunk driving. But it's very intrusive. I mean, how many people here would want to have to blow into a tube every time they started their car to drive to the corner grocery store?
Or you could punch in a code or answer a math question. There are other alternatives. That's just one.
What the DADS project is trying to do is to develop a less invasive technology that would be able to detect the presence of alcohol in the driver's breath or blood without the driver having to take actions, and do it quickly enough that it would seem seamless to the non-drunk person. One of the things that some people in this room may not have remembered is that we had technology to require people to wear their seatbelts. And there was such backlash against the seatbelt interlock, ignition interlock, that National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, until very recently, was prohibited from even thinking about writing a rule requiring that kind of technology going forward. Now, technology is a lot better today, and there are a lot more people wearing seatbelts today. Maybe that technology's got some potential, and there are automakers that are working on that technology. But you know, one of the things that you have to be careful with in mandating certain technologies that affect the way people use their cars is that it can create a backlash that can end up in political forbiddance of bringing technology into the cars.
That's a good point. Any other comments or reactions? You really don't want to say anything about this, do you?
Well, I mean, the thing that we look at from an entertainment standpoint is you've got to make the system as simple and easy as possible. It's got to be as close to AM/FM radio, what everybody's been using in technology for dozens of years, 75 years, 80 years. And if you don't make that as simple as possible, for one thing, people won't use it. And they'll continue to maybe just stream over Bluetooth. They're using their accessory port, and they're still using their smartphone in their car, which we don't want. Hands on the wheels, eyes on the road. That's been our motto since day one. But it takes a while. It is a very, very complicated system. These systems that they're putting in cars, they're extremely complicated. We have some of the best and brightest engineers in the automotive industry working on them, and they're very complex, how to get connectivity in the car and how to get apps in the car. And so it's not going to happen overnight. And we're, as Doug said in the first session, this is baby steps. We're in the infancy. The systems that are out there right now are nowhere near where they should be, and nowhere near where they're going to be in the near future. I think we work very closely with, I'm very fortunate working with most of the OEMs out there, and they're spending tremendous amount of dollars and tremendous amount of time trying to make the systems in the car as usable as possible and as safe as possible. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, but it's not going to happen overnight. And it's going to take a while. Just the way the automotive industry works, it's a 3 to 5 year cycle. And if you don't catch the cycle right, you're going to wait 3 years until a new technology comes out. So it's a constant ongoing process. And I would say in the next 3 to 4 years, the systems out there are going to be much easier to use and much safer to use.
So I just had a wonderful little press briefing today with my friends from General Motors OnStar and learned about some incredible things that are going on with the partners as well. But part of what I heard was about 4G being in the car. So 4G will be in GM cars and in obviously other cars as well. That allows, big broadband everything connectivity anywhere. Obviously enjoyable by passengers, which I don't think anyone has an issue with, right? But the question we keep coming back to the interface. And I'm starting here, there's two different points of view. One is that everything should be hooked up to the car and the interface is in the dashboard. And the other is more of a free market Wild West. You bring your product in and it works or not. Is that a dichotomy that's a reasonable dichotomy that I'm starting to understand? Anybody want to comment?
Well, I think that you're going to have a split review of that. I've got a 27-year-old daughter and 25-year-old son. As Charlton Heston used to say about in his NRA speeches, prying that out of my cold, dead hands. You're never going to pry that smartphone out of my kid's hands. That's their device, that's their music, that's their life. Everything's on there.
Or my Pandora on my tablet.
Right, or their tablet. They're going to bring that into the vehicle, and they're going to want to do that. People in my age group, 55 and plus, what they're going to do.
It's a young age group. I like that age group.
What they're going to do is they're going to say, hey, make it easy for me, whatever. If it's an embedded system, let's go with that. It's real easy. I don't have to worry about bringing my smartphone. It's right on my dash, one button touch away, and it works. So you're going to have a dichotomy there of who's going to want to use it. So I think the people, anybody under 40. Is going to definitely, you're not going to take that smartphone out of their hand. They're going to have some kind of way to connect to the car. Anybody over that age?
We do what we're told.
Simpler the better. Simpler the better.
Gloria, you have some views.
Yeah, I'll add to that is that the Alliance actually supports a comprehensive approach to this, working with the apps makers, the mobile device makers, all of the technology companies, and we also support a voluntary approach because the digital world is changing so quickly that we're still learning, we're researching, we're finding out information, and we're still adapting our systems. And for the Alliance Distracted Driving Principles, the first set of them we developed in 2002, which was 5 years before the smartphone came out and changed everything. And we've updated them twice since, and I really view them as some best practices about our combined knowledge about what works, what's effective, so that we can all try to make the driving environment as safe as possible.
Kevin, you referred earlier to the phase 1 and phase 2. For people who may not know what you're talking about, could you explain it?
Sure. So in 2010, I believe it was, NHTSA issued phase 1 distraction guidelines, which were recommendations to the auto industry that in designing vehicles with in-vehicle electronics, based on NHTSA's research, we recommend you adhere to the following principles. And those principles included, basically, the key function was limit the amount of time of eyes off the road and hands off the wheel. And specifically, it boiled down to 2 and 12. 2 seconds at a time, any task involving your time off, eyes off the road and your hands off the wheel, and then a total task time of 12 seconds. So you have to have an interrupted, not half, because again it's recommendation, but the principal recommended having tasks that can be accomplished within 12 seconds in 2-second intervals. And there are other features of it. There are certain things that we think are fundamentally going to be distracting and should occur in the vehicle. You should not enable people to watch the Super Bowl from the driver's position while they're driving down a highway. And there are just certain things that we think just cannot be done safely, and we actually recommended lockouts of certain per se tasks. But the fundamental recommendation was designed to be flexible to allow for and contemplate any type of technology being introduced adhering to the basic 212 principle. That was phase 1. We also announced that we would move into phase 2 and phase 3 guidelines. Phase 3 is in the future, and I don't know where we're going to get to. Phase 2, it deals with the voice interaction, which is a complex issue, and we're still trying to figure out the data on that. The phase 2 guidelines are what we announced we would be working on for handheld devices brought into the vehicle, where we would recommend the same general principles, but as they would apply to vehicles, to technologies that are not necessarily embedded in the vehicle from the beginning. But it's, again, the basic idea is reduce and limit the amount of distraction of the interface with the device. And we're working on that. We keep thinking it's imminent, and it always ends up being taking longer than we think. But I think the current announcement is sometime this year, I think is what we said. And I'm not trying to make news now. Whatever we said before, we're still working towards that. I just hate to predict it because it's been delayed before, and unfortunately these delays often happen.
So 2 days ago, Newt Gingrich, the former Speaker of the House and presidential candidate, for those who don't know, wrote a commentary called "Keep Bureaucrats' Hands Off Our Smartphones." And it said, does a week go by without news of federal bureaucrats outrageously extending their tentacles of authority over modern society? The NHTSA is claiming sweeping authority over our smartphones, asserting the right to approve any software that might be used in a car. Under the principle, NHTSA control could creep behind navigation apps, any software, including music applications, news alerts, email notifications, even the phone function itself can be considered as threats to highway safety. And he goes on pretty strongly to talk about how car companies are used to being regulated, and there's really no such thing as a voluntary standard by NHTSA because of the power and the authority that the NHTSA has over cars. But as some have pointed out, NHTSA has no authority that anyone can figure out under present law over products. But yet, you're talking about phase 2 guidelines. How do you reconcile that, Kevin?
As we talked about before, Gary, I actually had not read it. I'd heard about the article. I had not read it until a few minutes before, and Gary asked me to read it. So it said what I thought it would say. The former Congressman wrote an opinion piece based upon what he understood from all the press reports NHTSA was doing without actually having any idea what NHTSA is actually doing. We are not contemplating and working on any regulation of handheld devices, nomadic technologies brought into the vehicle. We've announced, and all that we're doing is working on what will be purely voluntary guidelines that the industry can choose to ignore or not. We would hope, because the industry is interested, as some of the panelists, George is making a point very, very clearly. We agree that y'all want to make the devices as easy as possible to use, and we want them to be as easy as possible to use, because the easier they are to use, the safer they're going to be to use. So we don't really think there's any divergence between what NHTSA is going to be recommending and what the industry wants to be doing, but a lot of people are crying the sky is falling that NHTSA is out to regulate the whole industry. As Lori can tell you, we actually don't regulate everything in the automobile. There's only parts of the cars that they build that right now NHTSA regulates. We have federal motor vehicle safety standards that can apply to everything in an automobile, including any automotive equipment brought into the automobile, but right now only applies to certain aspects of the car. So there's a lot of things that go into the car and that are built on the car that are not subject to NHTSA's regulation. It's because the agency only regulates when there's a safety need to do so. We are not in the mission of standing in the way of technological innovation of the vehicle itself or other technologies brought into the car. We have long-standing authority to regulate automotive equipment. So if you design an app which is designed to control your car, my iPhone right now, I can cut my car on. So, we regulate the key. When I take my key, actually my keys is also electronic, so it works the same way. So if you can regulate the key brought into the car, if your iPhone can also cut on the car, what is the big deal? And we don't think there's a big deal. It's been long-standing recognition that an app that interfaces with a car and can control the car is subject to NHTSA's regulatory authority. Now, right now, there aren't any regulations that apply to that iPhone app because there's no safety need that we've identified to actually regulate that. But if you were to have apps that were to create cars that were being cut on, turned on inadvertently, and they'd be put into drive and rolling off without the owner of the car even knowing that's happening, it'd be really easy to posit a safety need to do something about that app. And so if the need arises to deal with apps that are designed to interface with the vehicle, NHTSA has clear authority there. We're not talking about apps that are designed to interface with humans, because if you can use the app while you're walking down the street and you use it the exact same way in your automobile, then that's not something that we would consider automotive equipment. But there's plenty of apps out there being developed. A lot of them have great safety potential, and we very much would like to see them developed, that are specifically designed to interface with the car. And when they do that, they're automotive equipment that when the need arises, NHTSA could, again, if the need arises, because we can't just willy-nilly regulate, we can only regulate when there is a safety need, NHTSA could do that.
So just to clarify, because you used the word regulate, you kept saying we can't regulate, but you could issue guidelines is what you're saying, because you don't view that as regulation.
Guidelines are not regulations. Guidelines
but
are
you're smart.
regulations.
You've served as a smart lawyer for dozens of years, and you know that if you had clients and they say, oh, a government's issuing a guideline if I don't follow it, I'm taking certain risks, aren't I?
If you are producing unsafe devices, you are taking risks, and NHTSA's mission is to reduce safety risk on the highway. So, and that's part of our mission. So we are definitely trying to identify risk when they're there and get in front of them. And we generally work voluntarily. And we work in a very cooperative base with the auto industry, and we very much want to work in a cooperative base with the handheld devices and apps industry. And we want to cooperate with you to introduce safety and do things in a safe manner. That's the most effective way to protect the public.
And I'm actually going to try to make some news here by saying that the auto industry is actually going to give a shout out to NHTSA here, because when we were working with the agency on the voluntary guidelines last year, the agency was considering not including dynamic mapping And we had argued that if you include that as part of the guidelines, it's just going to drive people to use their cell phones. And ultimately, the agency did listen to us. And I actually see the agency as trying to work to find some sort of voluntary comprehensive solution, and is far more moderate than a lot of the what I call the cell phone abstinence groups out there that say just lock it in the glove box, don't use it at all, or put jamming systems in your cars. And I just think there's going to be such a backlash if that ever were to happen, is that we still need to find some way forward.
I'm going to come to you, David, to talk about the insurance view, not only of this, but other technologies that are out there. But I do want to say that from at least the CEA perspective, there are lots of technologies that have nothing to do with any of this, such as technologies which look at your eyes and see whether they're distracted. There's technologies which are being sold, lane shifting technology, which will tell you if you're leaving a lane, collision avoidance technologies. There's technologies which can perceive if you are not paying attention. And everything we've been talking about up to this point has to do with use of devices, yet, as we know, use of devices is a fraction of the reasons there are car accidents. There's drowsiness, and none of this will do anything about people falling asleep. A lot of people die. There are, obviously we talked about alcohol a little bit, but there are other reasons that people have collisions. So this is treating a symptom, and our big focus is making sure all these other innovations can get in the car. Insurance perspective, not only in this, but a broader perspective, are there technologies that the insurance industry is interested in? I've heard that people are getting lower insurance rates because they're allowing certain technology in their car to monitor their driving. Is that creating a new sub-industry of people who hire fake drivers for 30 days while they're being tested? I have so many questions for you I'd like to hear your answer to.
Right, I mean, so, I think there are technologies out there that have nothing to do with infotainment and distracting the driver from the driving task, but actually can help the driver manage, his distraction and his driving. Car manufacturers are fitting their vehicles with systems like Ford crash prevention, sensors that look out and try to detect whether or not a crash is going to occur, warn the driver if a crash is about to occur. If the driver doesn't take action, then apply the brakes automatically. There are systems that watch the lane lines to try to discern whether or not the driver is unintentionally running off the road in an attempt to make an automated adjustment, or at least warn the driver that he's about to run out of the road, off the road. These things, are the kinds of things that I think can help manage the driver's desire to engage in non-driving tasks while he's behind the wheel. And we were talking a little bit earlier, I mean, some of the things that the automakers are working on is using these sensors to understand the environment well enough that it can allow the driver to engage in these secondary tasks when the driving task is not so demanding, and then start curtailing some of these secondary tasks as the driving task becomes more demanding. And it's something that you haven't seen yet, but I mean, every automaker that I've visited is working on systems like that. We know that, for instance, Ford collision prevention systems are preventing crashes. We've measured this. We've worked with the automakers and our insurance partners to measure reductions in crashes. Cars that are equipped with front crash prevention systems have up to 15% fewer crashes with other vehicles than vehicles that don't, the same vehicles that don't have the systems. So they do make a difference. And one of the things that we'd like to see is more people choosing this equipment on their cars, because for the most part, it's optional equipment. And we think it can help drivers be safe.
So George, what's the answer here? Should you only be allowed to listen to Pandora? The only thing you should do in your car?
Sounds like a good idea. No, I think as far as what people can listen to, I think there's, as long as there's not moving pictures, as long as you're not, I mean, every time I go to Tokyo and I get in a taxi and I watch my driver driving around the streets of Tokyo on the wrong side of the road, for one thing, but watching his favorite sitcom and laughing along with the sitcom, and I'm saying, if this guy hits something, it's not going to be my fault. It's going to be his fault because he's watching this stupid TV show. So, as long as they're not doing that in the car, I think that's a great start right there for the U.S. driver. But distracted driving is going to be here forever until there's a completely autonomous drivers or no drivers at all. So the best way that we can do it is to work as closely we can with all the agencies, with NHTSA and with the auto manufacturers, with the audio suppliers, come up with solutions that are feasible, but and workable. But again, AM/FM. That's the holy grail. Is it can be when you push one button, you do it. Some of the manufacturers, speaking of the guidelines that you're talking about, some people are taking it to extreme. I've got a couple OEMs that are telling us now that we've come out with a lot of technology with satellite radio, internet radio. We can show you album art. And we've got some OEMs that are telling us they're going to show the album art for 6 seconds and then take it away because it might be a distraction. And so you've got different people looking at the guidelines a different way, but the bottom line is if it's not easy to use, nobody's going to use it. And if it's not good, nobody's going to use it. So you've got to balance there. You've got to find balance between safety and usability that you got to work on.
Well, it's interesting. We started out in 1924 as the Radio Manufacturers Association, and one of the first issues we had to deal with was when radios were being put in cars, there was a controversy that it was distracting and they should be banned. And the same thing happened, I think, with windshield wipers as well, ironically. History hurts. I mean, and actually, I started out early in my career going from state legislator to state legislator to make sure that the laws that said a driver cannot look at a TV set should be changed so they can look at navigational devices. And obviously, there's people like me, without a navigational device, I am really lost, literally. So the technology has generally been good things. Please.
Yeah, so George mentioned the FM radio. I mean, the very first FM or AM radios that came out in cars didn't have presets, right? So that was distracting. You had to sit down there and look at your dial and try to get the radio tuned in. Eventually, the industry came up with a solution to that, right? Well, we gave you 6 presets that you could select your 6 favorite channels. So again, I think, industry, when presented with these challenges, can provide the right solutions. Is it immediate? Do these technologies make their way into the vehicles first, then the distraction is recognized, and then solutions come? Absolutely. I mean, right, that's the natural evolution of all of these technologies that have come into cars. Where are we right now? We're somewhere in the middle, right? These phones are coming into cars left and right. I mean, I worry every day when my 18-year-old daughter goes to get in the car with her cell phone. I know that she's reading texts, right? It's going to happen. That's that age group. We need to do something as an industry to give her a solution to allow her to still have the interaction that she needs, okay, in today's society, and give her a way to do that. We need to give her a solution to do it in a non-distractive way so it doesn't cause an accident on the highway, on the roads, at the intersections, but yet allow this information flow to happen that is so prevalent throughout our society today.
So if you, as a parent, would you be interested in a product which monitors her driving, either through some insurance or product that could be put onto something like OnStar, which you could pay for, and you will find out how fast she's driving, what she's doing, whether she's doing, or a camera that's put in that you can monitor? Would you buy something like that?
Yeah, I don't really think so. Not me personally, right? I mean, I know my kids. Now,
it's always the other parents' kids that are bad.
No.
Typical response, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't feel like I need to monitor her, right? I don't
just want to keep her safe.
That's I want to keep her safe. I want solutions out there that are going to keep her as safe as possible. I mean, me monitoring her is, not the solution, I don't think. Now, on the insurance side, absolutely. I think that some great innovations going on about being able to understand driver behavior at an individual driver level so that you can adjust insurance rates and whatnot. Absolutely, I think that's great.
Any questions from the audience? I think there's there isn't a microphone, but I could repeat anything you said for the record books. Yes, could you identify yourself and shout out your question and keep it very brief?
Paul, with the Intune network, are there statistics yet about people killed in accidents with distracted driving?
Paul asks, are there statistics about people being killed with distracted driving? Gosh, I wish I was a panelist here. I would answer that question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, they've been keeping statistics for a number of years, and about 20% of crashes, 20% of fatal crashes are attributed to distraction, although not all of that is technological distraction. Technological distraction is a fairly small part of that. Because distraction has been with us for a long, long time. In fact, there's a 1979 study that we refer to all the time, and in that 1979 study, they came up with the same figure. 20% of crashes were caused due to driver inattention. There weren't cell phones in 1979. Drivers were distracting themselves with something else.
Okay. Yeah, in fact, there's two types of studies. There's studies that are done in a laboratory, and they're simulations, and they try to distract usually college students that are subjects. I personally don't think there's a lot of value in that. And then there's studies which are actually put a camera in real cars and track people around, and that produces, to me, real-life data. In fact, the Virginia Tech study, it was kind of funny in one sense that there was one person, one driver, who had so many accidents and near accidents, I think they had to throw her out of the study because it was skewing the results, correct? Yes. But the research does show, and when you think of distraction, obviously, it's the kids screaming in the back, it's putting your makeup on, or shaving, there's people do weird things in cars. Go ahead.
So just to add to that is that according to the government's data, 90% of crashes involve driver error of some kind, and that's why we're so high on a lot of the driver assist systems, because we think it can help reduce that number. But just to give a context to the portion of crashes that involve inattention of some kind, is that still is a very small number compared to the number of lives that could be saved. Just if everybody buckled up, I think we could save 5,000 to 7,000 lives a year. And so we like to stress that still, with the car, with advanced as it is today, the most important safety feature in a car still is the driver.
That's a great point. And when you get down to that 20%, it's a small percentage of the 20% that has to do with driving. And I think actually, my guess is that the distracted driving from text messaging is actually gone down because the public education committees are starting to work, which is a good thing. So, well, there are technologies which allow email to be read to you, and there's a lot of solutions that come out with all these things. To me, the important thing is we don't start borrowing solutions in favor of one solution, because there's very innovative people coming out with some really innovative solutions, because we don't want to see people killed or hurt. Any other questions? Yes, Richard Dougherty, the famous Richard Dougherty, the Envisioneering Group patent holder, recognized by the federal government as one of the most innovative people in the country.
Thank you, Gary, and you're on top of this panel. You can answer and lead them to great places. Are there any initiatives going on that would reward a driver for attentiveness and for purchasing driver-focusing technologies, lane changes, things that Gary had mentioned as such, instead of presuming always driver distraction for people to become better drivers through technology? Are there any initiatives for this, any investigations or studies going on?
Well, definitely insurers are looking at those kinds of things. I mean, a lot of insurers are messing around with what they call use-based insurance. It was mentioned a couple of times where the way that drivers drive, the time that drivers drive, are being taken into consideration to adjust the rates that they pay for insurance. There are also insurers that offer discounts for certain advanced driver training programs that are offered to young drivers. And a number of insurers, based on our findings that these driver assistance systems are reducing crashes, are also adjusting insurance rates accordingly. So at least from the insurance side of things, the business is trying to reflect what they understand works in terms of reducing crash risk.
Well, I learned from Telogis today, who is partnering with GM OnStar, that they have a software application. I'm not describing it correctly, I'm sorry, but basically working with fleet managers, you can get a tremendous amount of information, and if you actually reward the top 10 drivers for various behaviors that you define, it becomes quite a competition to get on that top 10 list. So it doesn't have to be exactly monetary, sometimes it's just recognition. It's also almost game-based. So, any other questions? I see one in the back, right there. So the question is, will there be more advertising on apps which will distract us? Anyone want to take a swing at that one?
There are going to be more ads.
On Pandora, at least.
Well, I mean, that's our business model. I mean, our business model, we had 76.2 million people in the last 30 days listen to Pandora, and a lot of them are listening in the car. So we have to monetize that, and the only way to monetize that in our world is to serve ads to those people. Now, we've made a commitment internally that we won't have a physical ad. There won't be. It's all going to be all over voice. It's not going to be any pictures. There's not going to be anything. No call to action. So we are trying to follow the guidelines. We don't want anybody distracted. But there's been an ad. There's been 17 minutes of ads on AM/FM radio since day one. So us adding 2 minutes of commercials on a Pandora station, is not much.
Was the word distracting or annoying?
Depends on how you look at it.
It's annoying, isn't it? I mean, advertising is what has supported old-fashioned radio for years and years and years, and a lot of people choose to listen to radio stations that offer less advertising, and a lot of people like myself, subscribe to satellite radio because of the lower amount of advertising.
Right. You can pay from Pandora. That was a softball for you.
You can pay for Pandora at Pandora One account, and you won't have to listen to your ads, right?
Yes, Marty. Please identify yourself.
Does heads-up displays, do they work? And if so, can they be made less expensive so they become ubiquitous like a backup camera?
Wow, who wants to talk about, briefly, the history of heads-up displays? All right, go ahead.
Well, I'll just start and say that really our objective is trying to keep your eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel. And so that we believe that the steering wheel controls, the heads-up displays, and the voice commands are a system that can help you do what you need to do, want to do, but also keep your eyes on the road. And that was actually part of the Virginia Tech naturalistic study, is that they found that the biggest risks were when people were looking down and texting. And so that's also keeping your eyes on the road. And so that we think that does have a lot of promise. Now, we've started to look further at the idea of augmented reality on the screen so that you can see where the turn is ahead of you. And that's something that we're going to have to work with, because there are concerns about adding even more technology like that in. And it may be distracting to some people, but very helpful to others.
Okay, we have, I'm sorry, Bob Fields, member of my executive board, one of my bosses in the room. We have no time. I am fair. Any one-sentence follow-up comments? Yes.
I have one sentence, and I just want to also give a shout-out to CEA for us.
Okay, wait. We have some more time. The conference king has. I saw the shot clock going down to 14 seconds. I want to take the three-pointer. Go ahead.
I'll finish my point, is that I think that technology is a solution, and that there's going to keep being waves of technology solutions. And I really wanted to give a shout out to CEA, not just for hosting this event each year, but also for its Innovative Safety campaign, where they're really trying to draw together all of the innovators and really try an education campaign to get more people engaged in using these products.
Well, thank you for coming here. Mr. Fields.
Thank you, Gary. Bob Fields, MyTech Electronics. We've been in the automotive aftermarket for a very long time. Part of the thing that rallied aftermarket manufacturers was the fact that we didn't have access to the automobiles. There was no, even something as simple for history, back a radio delete option. You couldn't even buy a car without a radio. So moving forward, as this technology continues to change very quickly, what the general public sees, and certainly what the aftermarket sees when we have efforts like this, is protectionism of the automotive manufacturers and controlling what goes on in there. So the question, other than just being a statement, would be, how do we go through processes like this, and not only in perception, but in reality, prevent monopolies for what consumers can put in their automobile. So prevent the monopoly of the automotive manufacturer controlling everything that's in the car. Because even simple things like the audio systems, 10 years ago they started embedding heating and controlling controls within the entertainment system. That was just, that's ludicrous, we would think, from the outside, but it prevented people from changing their radio or something, and now it's much more complicated than that. So how do we prevent monopolies and allow consumers the freedom to choose the devices that they want to bring into the car?
It's a great question, Bob. Thank you.
So I would characterize this as what happens when two worlds collide. And isn't the Consumer Electronics Show motto faster, smaller, cheaper? And that for automobiles is our cycle can be 5 to 10 years to develop a vehicle. And I have trouble getting access to the facilities for automakers because they're so competitive and it's so confidential, everything that they're working on. And so I think this is two worlds colliding, and that the automakers, though, are seeing that their customers want these technologies and they want them to be as functional as what they're using in their smartphone, and that there is going to be a way that they're going to be able to work together more closely with the electronic community. And I think it's already happening just by the attendance at the CES show each year.
So I think I think there's going to be some dichotomy here, right? So while they want to enable like the information access coming into their vehicle from a variety of sources and from a variety of players, so they're trying to build systems to do that. But yet on the other hand, they're held accountable, right, both by society and by the government and by everybody else about the safety of that interface and what's happening with that consumer in the vehicle when accessing this information. So, so they've got a very difficult walk to walk. Right? They need to provide this safe interface, yet open it up to a wide variety of information. Because, me as a consumer, I have certain affinities for certain sites. Pandora, ESPN for my sports news. Somebody else for weather news. Maybe it's the Weather Channel versus another one. So I want this choice in my vehicle, but yet it needs to be presented through some safe interface. Now you'll see people like Apple and Google trying to come up with their solutions for the vehicle and trying to get into this space. That presents a problem for the OEMs, I think, as well, right? So number one, they start losing control over what's happening there, which opens them up to some liability issues potentially. But then also, they want to own this interface with their customer because there's a lot of stickiness through these applications, through these interfaces, right? So they want to maintain that relationship and don't necessarily want to open it up to the entire world to have access to that consumer again, right? They want to build some brand loyalty there.
So Kevin, let me ask you the question a different way. Earlier today on this panel, you indicated that safety is your mission. How about competition and innovation?
So competition is not per se our mission. Our mission is purely safety, and fuel economy is another mission of ours. But we very much see technology not as a problem, but as a solution. Gloria stole a lot of my points, and I'm glad she did because she made them well. The biggest problem behind the wheel is the person behind the wheel, and we recognize that. It's either yourself or the other guy behind the wheel. That's where most of the risk is out there. So technology holds much more, from NHTSA's standpoint, and we fundamentally believe this, technology holds much more of a promise of safety than a threat to safety. There can be technological threats to safety, and we try to address those when they arise, but we're generally bullish about this. We have programs to encourage technological innovation. So anything which is standing in the way of innovation, that would stand in the way of innovating the new breakthroughs that are going to allow us to reduce distraction, that are going to allow us to deal with people falling asleep behind the wheel, they're going to allow us to deal with people driving drunk, they're going to allow us to deal with the risk factors that humans engage with behind the wheel, we view as being a purely positive thing, and we very much want to encourage that innovation and not do anything to stand in the way of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. I just wanted to not miss the opportunity.
Could you introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry, Roger Lanctot with Strategy Analytics.
We all knew that. Thank you, Roger.
I wanted to ask David Zuby because IHS has a unique role in the industry, in the marketplace, and you have an equivalent, not completely identical organization in the UK called Thatcham, which does research on accidents and how vehicles are constructed and how to save lives. What about the idea of IHS taking an advocacy role in the market to promote technologies that have been proven to save lives, like automatic emergency braking? So Thatcham right now is advocating for a kind of $100 supplement from the government for anyone buying a car which is coming with automatic emergency braking. Is there any scenario where IIHS could play a role like that and take more of an advocacy position in the market?
So I guess we view our attempt at advocacy is basically through our consumer information programs. In September, we launched ratings of front crash prevention systems that include both forward collision warning and these automatic emergency braking systems, in an attempt to raise awareness among the consuming public that these systems are out there, and also help them make decisions about which systems are going to provide them the most benefit. Technically, IIHS is not a registered lobbying organization, so we don't have the direct ability to lobby government for legislation that would result in mandated discounts for this kind of stuff. But we are trying to do as much as we can to get the word out that some things work and work very well, and we think that they're worth consumers extra expense.
If I can add, Gary, NHTSA actually has a program which doesn't directly benefit to consumers, but certainly is something that we use to encourage auto manufacturers to roll out the new technological innovations. It's our new car assessment program, where you get, in addition to your star rating, your 5-star rating, you get an additional, on the label, you get an additional call out if you have certain safety features. And right now, all 3 of the ones that get the new cars, the NCAP bonus, and it's not points, but it's just an additional rating feature, are all technological things: forward collision avoidance warning, the lane departure warning, and the rear view cameras, which are all new electronics coming in the cars, are what we encourage. And when those cars have those safety features on the label, we call it out and encourage it. And we actually have a big program to encourage public to adopt the NCAP features.
Okay, we have 1 minute and 23 seconds left. Each of you complete this sentence. 5 years from now, this successor panel will be discussing how the connected car has made our lives better by...
Simplification. Simplifying things.
Gloria?
It's made our lives better by making your time in the vehicle more productive and safer.
Brian?
So that's exactly what I was going to say, Gloria. I think it's all about productivity going forward and safety. So the connected car is going to bring, a safer experience while allowing me to accomplish more.
David?
Yeah, the greater availability of and affordability of crash avoidance and driver assistance systems.
Kevin, final word.
I agree with everybody else in the panel.
Thank the panel, ladies and gentlemen.